Welcome to Profiles in Eccentricity, a show about weirdos. With your hosts, John Fahey, Aaron Peter, and Matt Brousseau.
Hello, folks. Welcome to Profiles in Eccentricity. It's a doggone show about weirdos, apparently. Joining me, the best man, Aaron Joseph Pita.
Apparently.
The best man.
The best one.
Period.
Second to none.
Yeah.
Except maybe one.
No. Except, no.
There's a guy over here who may be the key grip.
I do have a good grip.
Yeah, the key bump grip.
Hey, Mr. El Chapo
Chop
himself.
it up. Try it out.
Matthew Brousseau.
Hi.
How are you, Matt?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Did you happen to notice in the Discord discussion forum that our listener and friend Donna she pointed out it's Pablo Escobar. And Escobar.
Yeah.
I mean,
Pablo.
Wow.
And Aaron pointed out a long time ago at a trim, it's El Chapo.
Yes.
The chop is
Yes.
present.
El Chapo.
Yeah.
The
And,
one who chops.
right. Pablo Escobar.
Raw blow.
Yes.
Right, raw blow.
Raw blow.
Raw blow.
Oh, that unstepped on blow.
Yeah, he's blowing
This
raw.
blow's raw, dude.
It's so great. It's so great. Why do things work out that way?
Because there's a God.
The only couple of names associated with massive cocaine trafficking all
El
have
Chapo.
Pablo Escobar.
It's great.
And the bear, his namesake. Guys, it's we're coming up on 50 episodes.
Wow.
I'm gonna just tell you right up and now we're doing Richard Milhouse Nixon for episode 50.
Hey, Milhouse.
Very excited about that.
Tricky Dick.
I love The Simpsons.
Yes,
I
yes.
don't.
I do wonder about the character Milhouse, though. I'm like, was that just straight? What about this name Milhouse?
I think so. I don't.
It would have to
I
be.
remember reading all of that at some point.
Presumably.
Huh.
But we're all going to get into that at a later date. Today's going to be a little bit of a potpourri, Aaron. Yes, a little bit of a sampling, I'm afraid.
Odds and ends, if it is.
General ephemera, sort of thing. Matt has divulged nothing. He will be leading us into...
No, he's a safe. He's a Halliburton suitcase.
Hide me in your basement.
Keeps it locked up real tight.
Keep him in your pizza gate.
That's all right. Yeah, I got tonight's pizza from Comet Pizza.
Yeah.
The only thing that you told me is that has to do with homosexuality.
Yes.
Homosexuals?
Yes.
Buggery?
Well, no.
Something a little bit different.
But
now something different.
Eccentricity of a sort.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, historical.
I love that. And it has to do with presumably copulation.
Oh yeah.
Fellatio.
We'll get into that.
Yes, I hope it gets into me as well. We're going to do this the whole episode now. Yes, a couple of good old boys who've been around the block, as it were, listening a little bit about homosexuality. Break out the cocaine, boys. Call me Pablo.
What do you think these wigs are powdered with?
Why do you think we're always shitting everywhere?
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Yes. Ready to go, Matt.
All right. Well, I'll start this one off. I'll just say it's about Gentleman Jack. Double mellowed for exceptional smoothness, inspired by the original Gentleman distiller and founder. Gentleman Jack undergoes a second charcoal mellowing to achieve exceptional smoothness. Its balanced flavor is perfect for celebrating life's extraordinary occasions, plus all the moments along the way. And I'll be honest, the whiskey, that's the whiskey.
Are we sponsored by Gentleman Jack?
I mean, might as well be. I read that fucking perfectly. Fuck that whiskey. That whiskey sucks. I meant to bring in some Johnny Walker that we could all toast.
Yeah.
But I completely forgot to in these 5 minutes we've been setting up here. But I don't know. Fuck that. I want to talk about Ann Lister.
Okay.
Born 1791 in Halifax, the town. in West Yorkshire, the county. She was born to James Lister. He was a foot soldier in the British infantry. The Regiment of Foot, they called it, because they have a fun way with words. He was
the foot soldier from the Ninja Turtles.
The Regiment of Foot. He was a man. He was in the British Army. He was wounded at Concord in 1775. And he kept a diary while he was there. It was actually published. They published a diary under the wildly creative title, The Concord Fight, being so much of the narrative of Ensign Jeremy Lister of the 10th Regiment of Foot as pertains to his services on the 19th of April, 1775, and to his experiences in Boston during the early months of the siege.
Oh, those rascally Americans.
They had a lot of ink for titles back then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, shit. Words are cheap.
I guess if brevity is the soul of wit, I guess these Yanks had none.
Yeah. No, it's a British publication.
Yes, well,
yes.
That too.
So the Listers, they owned this place called Shibden Hall in Halifax. It dates back to 1420.
Huh.
Yeah, and they owned it. 1420. There's this hall.
Long time.
Yeah. They owned it in 1619. They're the Lister Lions, for everybody keeping track at home. And various members of the family would live there. They would stay there as they passed through, or for months on end. And the ownership of it would fall to the the oldest man of the family.
Ah, the elder Lister, as it were.
Yes. And her father,
Mr. Lister, as it were.
James Lister was a struggling businessman of sorts. But Anne, she was the second child of the family. Her older brother was born in 1789. He died a year later.
Oh.
She was born in 1791, the second child of the family. She would have one more sister and 3 more brothers, and all of the boys would die young. Only the women would live.
Destiny, I'm afraid.
Something like
And when she was 13 in 1804, she went off to boarding school, and that's where she...
Fister Lister is what they call it.
The spreading of the Y, I'm afraid.
It's late while we're recording this. I should add that.
Yeah, it's 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah, we were working for like 50 hours in 3 days.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Amazing. Thank you for coming.
Fister Lister, she goes to boarding school.
Boarding
it's her
school.
nickname.
She was 13. She goes to boarding school. She meets her roommate, this woman named, or a girl at the point, Eliza Rain. She was a daughter of a surgeon from the East India. It was a British regiment in India, and they shared an attic space in the boarding school, and they explored their sexuality.
Non-binary bread.
She's poly, she's bi, gender queer, gender neutral.
And Eliza was Anne's first love, and they had a great time together. They exchanged letters, and then Anne was. She was whipped every day, she says, at the school. She was whipped because she was not
By
a good
her girlfriend.
No, she was by the headmaster. She was not a good kid. She was kicked out after 2 years. She didn't submit well to authority. She says she was too often caught staring at other girls. That's one of the reasons why they whipped her.
Yeah, because she didn't have enough of a phallus appetite.
Oh, it's one of those things.
Good God.
And but after she got kicked out, her and Eliza would continue writing letters. And then one day, one of her letters was confiscated, and Eliza got in trouble. Because they were kind of love letters at times. And so Anne, after this, Anne and Eliza, they devised an encrypted writing system that Anne would use the rest of her life. It was a mix of Greek and algebra. And it was...
What?
Yes. And no one...
Oh, how romantic.
And at the time, no one was able to decipher it.
Gotta do
Yeah, I mean, if you can crack it...
You gotta do some math to read you. Oh, gross.
But I mean,
we're breaking up.
But once you have the code... I mean, you can say the nastiest shit on earth.
Yeah, but
You know?
if it's really nasty, it is in code.
Yes.
I don't think so. I think it's
Yeah,
rather
the way I do it,
rather
it is.
blatant.
The way
Stay
I do
tuned,
it.
lads. We will answer this bet later.
Is there?
I don't know,
Are we
Aaron.
gonna read?
I don't know. I'm not
Who's to
there
say?
yet.
Oh, I
Who's to say?
I love letters.
Who's to say?
Who's to say?
Who's to say? So, Anne, much like her father, she was a prolific diarist. She wrote everything down. She wrote things on scraps of paper until about 1816 when she actually had bound books that she would write it in. But, here's an example of this. This is 1808. She writes, drank tea at Mr. A's. She was hanging out with Eliza and Miss Alexander. Drank tea at Mr. A's and supped also. After tea, at Eliza's instigation, I had Miss Anne and hung out with her.
I love supping.
Mm-hmm.
I love to sup.
In 1810, she meets Isabella Northcliffe, who she would call Tib in her diary. I don't know why.
Maybe
But apparently that's some sort of
algebraic expression.
Yeah. They became close friends, and they would become lovers of sorts. And though later Anne would distance herself from Isabella for two reasons, which we may get into at some point. Okay. In 1812, though, Isabella introduces her to Mariana Belcombe, and Mariana and Anne then became inseparable. And they explored themselves and learned about who they were together. And at one point, they exchanged rings as a token of a wedding of sorts.
Right. Oh, that's serious. Huh?
Very nice.
Not like a promise ring, like you're fleeting.
I mean, it was a promise of sorts, kind of like when the time comes, we will.
Wow, this is pretty serious.
It's getting
How
very
old is she
serious.
at this point?
So 18. So she's about around 20 years old at this point.
Nice, middle age.
1813, though, her remaining brother Jeremy dies while swimming. You know that.
One of
these fellas,
these guys,
these fellas, they don't make it.
No, they're swimming.
They're weak.
They don't. Yeah,
they're
yeah.
weak.
And I'll tell you what they're doing is they're not chasing down the hot ladies like the ladies.
Like Anne.
Yeah. Like Anne is. Anne's tearing it up.
She's making up for all those dead brothers.
Yeah.
Well, so what happens is that's unrelated to the story.
Oh,
sorry.
Not after what she was eating.
1815. So Jeremy dies, and he's the last official lister, of the father. So now Anne is in line to inherit Shibden Hall. This mighty hall,
which has been in the family since the 1400s,
1600s.
1600s.
Yes. And so in 1815, she moves permanently to Shibden Hall. Her uncle and her aunt are living and working there, and they're running it. And she's allowed an allowance. The hall at this point has apartments and it has farms. And so the owners of the hall, they make money from the apartments and from the farms.
right.
And so Anne is given an allowance, and she's exploring who she is, and she walks around the town, and she has kind of a masculine look to her. And she walks around the town in all black and in a gown, but also with a manly cut to it. And to the point where Mariana was embarrassed to be seen with her because some men would heckle them. And so at this point, the townspeople started calling her Gentleman Jack in Halifax.
Really?
But she's industrious. She teaches flute. She travels. She goes to Paris. She's learning more Greek and other languages. She's expanding her mind. She's also kind of a classist. They were old money in Halifax, and she, much like people back then, she looked down upon the new money folks.
Of course.
But
Really?
Yes, but she needed a social circle, so she still befriended them when possible and talked shitty about them when they were not around.
You're kidding.
Typical.
Serious.
Typical.
So she is completely not open to new money.
Right.
Yet she is a bit of a homosexual, which is something of a different thing to be at the time.
Yes, class doesn't,
Yeah, they still don't get it, do they?
yeah,
So
I'm
it doesn't
a
matter.
homosexual woman who dresses a bit like a man, but I'll be goddamned if you call me a nouveau riche.
Yes, I'm not some kind of Bill Gates. Sort of fella.
I may dress like Steve Jobs, but I can assure you I've had my money much longer.
It's more of a Rockefeller than a rock a lady, I suppose.
Very nice. Very nice.
But like it's just like you're still hung up on this. It's like it's one of those things where I'm like, how is this perspective?
How do you sleep at night, lady?
How is it not enlightening? It's like when you meet gay racist people,
Yeah.
and you're
Yes,
like,
yes.
but
Right.
you don't. And they're
The
like,
privilege. The privilege is you're born into the privilege, and how do you escape that?
right.
She was a big fan of Rousseau, and she read many philosophers. She was a big fan of the Rousseau quote, from his confessions. Je sens mon cœur, et je connais les hommes. Je ne suis fait comme aucun de ceux que j'ai vu. Which is to say, I know my own heart, and I know those men, and I am not like them.
And that is gay algebra lesbian, right?
In essence, for her.
Yes.
Yes.
Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
Yes. We. Not Jimmy or Matt. Brousseau. In 1818, though, her love, Mariana, she needs money, and the tough part for women back then is when you don't have money, what do you do? I mean, it's the trick men pull. Be like, well, you got to marry a dude now in order to survive.
They're the ones with the money,
right?
Yeah.
So Mariana marries this man named Charles Lawton. He was a soldier of sorts, and he had plenty of money. Though she and Anne continued to fool around behind his back.
He was watching.
And he may have intercepted some of their letters and gotten the understanding, and that's probably why he didn't want them to hang out very much.
Right.
But so her and Anne are hanging around Halifax, and they become the talk of the town in that scandalous way. But then in 1826, her aunt dies, and her uncle had died a few years before, and now she inherits Shibden Hall, and
she's the chief.
She's the chief of it. And so she writes about all of this time. She writes in her diaries. There's the cryptic parts, but the non-cryptic parts are very. If you want to understand what life was like back then, it's I went here, I bought this stuff, I went here.
She supped.
She supped.
Yeah.
She's a prolific diarist. She write over 4 million words over her life.
God, fucking get a job.
Well, her job was running.
But yes.
What is my job? Writing about the things I do all day, which is mainly writing.
Well, I mean, the idea.
Dear diary, today I wrote in my diary.
Right. But I mean, now we live in the day where the diary is public, so it's like a whole different thing. So we kind of are more annoyed by it. But back in the day, the diary was one of these things that was thought to be a lasting.
Yes.
Thing of
That's a good practice.
Obviously subjective truth, but a diary can be very illuminating.
Yeah.
And you would write a diary hoping, especially if you were an outsider, an outlier, and you would be like
Snapchat story of the day.
Yes.
But it might not be appreciated till centuries later.
Yeah.
So there was nobility in the diary, even though it seems navel-gazing and indulgent to guys like you and me, like, shut up and farm.
Right.
Well, I mean, I
Get
think
down there and sup on that lady's naughty bits.
I think today the problem is that a diary is
It's
posted
public.
daily publicly. When if you went home and wrote it privately, maybe you would have a better sense of who you were as opposed to when you put it out there immediately. Now you're shaping yourself for.
And presumably the idea is that nobody's ever going to care about your diary, and so it only serves to make you learn about yourself and your perspectives.
And they'll read it when you're dead, and you won't care.
Right.
You maybe will haunt them.
Now, back then it was something for self-examination, and now it's something for self-exposition.
Yes. That's a good way of putting it. And so in 1826, she also goes. She travels to Paris, and she meets a woman named Maria Barlow, and she becomes. Oh no, I'm sorry. Mariana Barlow was the person she was with. She ends her love with her, and she meets this older woman in Paris, and she has a tryst with her. And she understands now what she's looking for is a rich woman who she can basically become a partner with, and then sustain her life, because she doesn't want a man.
Right.
Yeah, and she respects the class system, so she has to be rich and come from those circumstances.
Right.
Okay.
So and then years go by. 1832. She's 41 now, and she meets a woman named Anne Walker, who is in Halifax. And while they don't exactly fall in love necessarily, they become close partners. And Anne Walker has plenty of money, and using Anne Walker's money, Anne Lister then starts building around Shibden Hall. She rebuilds all of the walkways. They add a Gothic tower. They add waterfalls. They add all this grass, and they beautify the area basically. Mm-hmm. And then in 1834, they take communion together on Easter Sunday in the Holy Trinity Church in York.
Hey.
And in their view, they are officially married.
Yes.
Though not by the laws of the land at the time.
Right.
And also, she goes out and she's making business. She opens a coal mine.
Oh boy!
Wow.
Much to the men in Halifax, this was terrible for the woman to open a coal mine. They burned her in effigy because of this.
Why?
She opened a coal
She
mine.
opened a coal mine.
Yeah, but I mean,
What kind of woman opens a coal mine?
so it was just
Back then.
because she was a
just
woman.
because she was a woman.
Right.
This is our hole in the ground.
That's
Right.
Our job is to dig never-ending tunnels beneath the earth for rock we can burn.
Yes.
It's a man's job.
Yes. Owned by a man.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. There's a lot of logic. And so she's using her and Anne travel a lot, and you know they don't get along great, but you know there's a partnership there. But they're traveling a lot, and they travel to Western Europe, they travel to Eastern Europe, and in 1840 they're traveling through Russia and European Georgia, and Anne contracts a fever in the Caucasus Mountains in Georgia, what is now Georgia, and she dies. And
Shit.
Anne Walker, she embalms her, Anne Lister, and it takes 7 months, and they drag the body back home and bury it. Mm-hmm. And Anne Walker takes over Shibden Hall as part of the marriage deal they had,
Which everybody is going along with.
Yes. Well, then another amazing thing about back then is if you have a relative that you don't like, you conspire with a doctor to rule them insane, and you drag them off to the insane asylum, and then you take their money.
Right.
Very good.
Yes.
Which Anne Walker clearly was.
Anne Walker was not insane, but
No.
one of her relatives conspired with the doctor
To say
they
she was.
dragged her to an insane asylum. They take her money, but that leaves Shibden Hall back to the Listers.
Right.
And in the late 1800s, Charles Lister, descendant of the family of Anne, he discovers her diaries, her prolific diaries, and he reads through them, and he's able to decipher the code. And he sees explicitly, or what she has written, the explicit nature where she has detailed all of her relationships to the finger, if you will.
There's something of a digital penetration.
But Charles is a closeted homosexual himself.
The plot thickens.
And so he's like, I can't release these. So his partner says, burn them. And
Listen,
he says, no.
How do you think a male Lister survived without? You know what I mean? It's goblin cock.
Uh-huh. How else, John?
These hetero Listers
Yeah.
don't live.
Yeah.
Come on.
No.
Haven't you been listening?
Yeah.
It's true. He didn't go swimming in water. And so he hides these away, and then decades later, they're brought out again. And thanks to the work of Dorothy Thompson, Patricia Hughes in the late 1980s, they're fully deciphered, and they publish some of the diaries. And then Helena Whitbread, who is also from Halifax, she would publish everything.
No, if I may interrupt.
You may.
We just kind of went over a bunch of stuff that I feel like in the interim, did Charles not try to clear the reputation of Anne as an insane person?
Oh, no. I mean, she wasn't part of the Listers, so who cares?
Right. And plus,
She was just another paramour of his
So
naughty
what
aunt.
was the point of deciphering and publishing or making public these diaries?
Well, that there were lesbians
That
that existed before the term lesbian ever existed.
Right.
The term lesbian wasn't first written down until the late 1800s.
Right.
yeah, and like the thing is, like in like the royal family, especially, there's a great deal of homosexuality and
What?
yeah, I mean, tons of homosexuality and stuff like that. So it seemed like it was like, these noble families who were always kind of told, all the way up to Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde was, obvious homosexual to almost everybody, but he only really was talking to the higher classes that didn't care about that thing because they already knew tons of people that were homosexuals, and they were like, well, that's fine for us.
Yeah.
We know that the common people are, hard bigots, but we know that we control everything, and so for us to be homosexual is completely fine.
Yes.
But also, maybe on the turn of a dime, it can be turned against you.
Absolutely. Back then, that could have been cause for dragging someone to the insane asylum.
If somebody had an agenda, you would be like, well, they're homosexual, and people would be like, what?
It was a sin.
Yeah, you could lead it against them.
Yeah,
but it could if you were a popular person, an open secret is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
The minute you're unpopular,
they use it against you.
Yeah, So
the reality of a life of a lesbian woman from the early 1700s is now public. And all of these encrypted parts are now unencrypted.
Yes.
And you see her talk about what would be a very normal life these days. But back then,
stepping on gash.
And so they notice, they do that. They notice some things in her diaries. There would be parts where she would, on certain days, she would put little crosses on the days. And
a la Mallrats. Smiley face with eyebrows means I had an orgasm.
Exactly.
You remember the movie?
Exactly. Yes, very good.
And they discovered in these parts that the word kisses meant orgasms. Much like the French word baiser, which can mean fuck and can mean kiss.
I faked 3 kisses today.
Well, so for example, menstruation is mentioned as a reason to not kiss. But she also writes, 2 good kisses at once last night and 3 this morning after 8.
Good Lord.
2 at once.
3 or 4 all at once last night and 1 more, a good one, at 4 this morning.
Jesus.
And so then they decipher also there were moments so that when the townspeople were heckling her, one time the townsperson yelled, one of them is like a man, does your cock stand straight? Which is how apparently you would heckle back then.
No, but my butt clit does.
So one of her 1821, she writes that she burned, some man was in love with her and he wrote her letters, and she writes that she burned them all. It's 1821. She's about 30 years old at this point. She writes, this is encrypted, I love and only love the fairer sex, and thus, beloved by them, in turn my heart revolts from any other love than theirs. It's very nice.
Preach, lady.
1823, could not sleep last night, dozing, hot and disturbed, a violent longing for a female companion came over me. Never remember feeling so painfully before. It was absolute pain to me. Later that year with a woman, she writes, in the midst of all this, we drew close together, made love, and had one of the most delightfully long, tender kisses we've ever had. Said she in the midst of it, oh, don't leave me yet. This renewed and redoubled my feelings. We slept in each other's arms.
That's great.
Damn.
And they also revealed that she would pull a trick sometimes when she was meeting women to find out whether they would be interested in women.
Yes, this is exactly what I was hoping to find out.
She would say things like, this was what someone said to her, but she would also use things like this. Someone said to her, "Êtes-vous Achilles?" And she said,
"Are you Achilles?"
I laughed and said she made me blush, brought Miss Mack into my room, joked with her about the question, said it was exceedingly well put. She said I was the only one in the house to whom she could have written it, because the only one who would have understood it. And êtes-vous Achilles is an allusion to when Achilles dressed as a girl in the court of Lycomedes in order to escape the oracle that says he's about to die in the Battle of Troy. So she was so well read in all of these things, it was a trick of sorts to suss out who among you is aware of the cross-dressing or the sapphism of these written works.
Yes. The small amount of queer references to pull out at the time.
1, are you well read? 2, are you a lesbian?
That's pretty high wire.
Deep cut.
Yeah, pretty fucking high wire.
And it's also revealed that she had a venereal disease. She writes in 1824, had a very good kiss last night. Tib had not a very good one. I have been perpetually in horrors for fear of infecting Tib. I wonder whether the discharge is at all venereal or not. Because
maybe she just squirted her.
Well, she was sleeping with Mariana one night, and then much later she contracted the thing Mariana had, which they believe came from Mariana's husband, who was known to tell her that he was cheating on her.
Oh,
yeah,
filthy
he was
man.
carousing with hookers.
Yeah.
But also
and homosexuals.
a fun thing from 1825. Mariana put me on a new watch ribband and then cut the hair from her own queer. Queer was a slang she used for vagina.
Yeah, me too.
Sometimes she would say we touched queers.
Yeah, me too.
Put a new watch ribbon and then cut the hair from her own queer, and I that of mine, which she put each into its own little lockets. We got at Bright's this morning, 12 shillings each. For us
They made pube necklaces?
for us always to wear under our clothes in mutual remembrance. We both of us kissed each bit of hair before it was put in the locket.
Gross.
What a testament to hetero male sexuality. The vagina was called a queer. What sort of a queer business is this? I read this woman's poor diary. It seems to be something of a clitoris.
They would cut off strands of each other's pubis and wear it around their neck like some sort of queer memento. I mean, how queer is that? Jasper, please, return to filleting me, please.
The whole thing is entirely strange, I'm afraid.
As she writes in some of the cryptic writing that one of the reasons she didn't like Isabella that much is because she drank too much and she didn't find her very attractive. And she also writes when she was with Ann Walker, they talked about dildos, and she says, I mentioned the girl at school in Dublin that had been obliged to have surgical aid to extract the thing. Which was a danger back then, much like gay men before, when they had to hide their sexuality, inserting things privately and having to go to the emergency room for it.
Right.
When it's not legal, you do terrible things to do it.
Yeah.
This stuff got stuck up there.
Yeah.
She talks about when one of the first times she was with Ann Walker, who had previously been married. She talks about how she broke her hymen, and she said, "I think it was more intact and a virgin than I had latterly surmised." And she said she was very tender there, and she inserted a right middle finger. But Ann Walker whispered to me how gentle and kind I was to her, and faintly said she loved me. Or else, how can you think? And said she, I should let you do as you do.
Wow.
Very nice.
Have at it.
It's consent.
But Ann Walker was also like, would it be worse with a man? And wouldn't it be better? And Ann Lister writes, fancying I had a penis and was intriguing with her in the downstairs water closet at the Langton before breakfast, to which she had made no objection. But she also writes, she did not think she would have suffered so much if she was really married. It would be different, would be easier. Oh, I thought to myself, I see how it is. My difficulty in getting her on Monday night and my being able to do so little was not that she was expected or relished. I combated her idea that she would suffer less with a man. Explained why. I thought her mistaken, thinking she would bear a man more easily than me. And she explained the sizes of men by saying, how Caesar was a bilober. I don't know what that was supposed to mean, believer. As big as 2 books.
He had a 2-book cock?
I guess so.
Yeah.
And then she wrote,
multi-volume.
mentioned some women taking even an ass and the woman in Paris with a dog to be seen for 10 francs.
Donkey shows?
In Paris for 10 francs.
Whoa.
And so as much as it's a tale of lesbian love, it's also revealing about the terrible things you can see in France for 10 francs.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
And the steal.
I mean, I guess...
10 francs?
Terrible. I mean...
That's each his own.
Right. Yeah, eye the beholder, I
suppose. Ass
suppose.
or a dog?
Yeah.
I mean, what else do you want?
It's a big night.
It is a very big nine.
Big nine?
Big night! It's a canine.
That's a book.
And so there's an insane amount of detail in all of these, and I've just touched on some of the ones I could find. A lot of
right,
but some of this stuff is some of these books are not available because they're just not republished, and it's insane to me that the realities of human experience is not more published. But I'm just going to leave. This is the second to last thing I want to say. This is one of my favorite things. She talks about how she was making Mariana kiss one night. And Mariana often murmurs, "Oh, how delicious," at the very moment.
Oh.
Kind of sweet and very dumb and an old. Oh, how delicious, yes.
Oh, so delicious when I fucking nut. I mean, the moment is presumably
The moment.
the
The
moment.
fact that she can say anything while she's kissing is great. Sometimes it's just eye crossing and
Oh yeah,
Oh, I recite the alphabet. Speak for yourself.
Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, exactly. Last thing, and this is good news in a way. July 24th of 2018, a blue plaque with a rainbow edging and wording "Gender non-conforming entrepreneur" celebrated marital commitment without legal recognition to Anne Walker in this church. Easter 1834 was put a plaque in England was put at the Holy Trinity Church in York to honor Anne Lister and Anne Walker. And then the wording was criticized because they didn't use the word lesbian, so they said they would change it to lesbian instead of gender non-conforming. So,
Well, I guess
I feel
she
like in
was
6 months they're gonna have to change it to gender non-conforming because lesbian is too derogatory.
Well, I mean, I just think it's. I mean, I don't know if she was she both. I don't really know enough. I suppose.
Yeah.
well, the term lesbian was not a term then.
Right.
Right.
When they were alive.
She was a queer with a queer.
Yes. Well, sort of playing with a queer sort of mystery box. I don't understand. It's a puzzle box, as it were.
So
It's a Hellraiser cube.
I think it's a story of eccentricity that is actually not eccentric except for the time it was in.
Yes,
Right.
times are eccentric. Yeah, but I mean, those noble positions were really where.
Eccentricity thrived.
Yes.
Because you're able to.
And
Yes,
also
absolutely.
were made acceptable. I mean, you
And
know.
you also have record of it, whereas your everyday grunt is not. One, probably can't read or write. Two, can't afford paper or ink. Three, socially, it is not afforded the luxury of being able to kind of let their freak flag fly.
Yeah, and I mean socially, there's the old story of the ladies of Llangollen, who maybe they weren't lesbians, but these two women who separated kind of from society and lived in Llangollen on their own, and they were kind of famous worldwide. All of these poets would go and visit them, and writers would visit them and see these two quote unquote eccentric women just living together as women.
Yes.
And
Stephen King's The Langoliers.
Right. Yeah. Fantastic.
but it's kind of insane to me that. I've never heard this story. Like,
Yeah,
this is
I've never-
HBO and BBC are coming out with a documentary type thing about it in 2019.
Yeah. Really.
But in all of history, you wouldn't know lesbians existed until 1960 or something.
Yeah, I mean these positions of nobility and stuff like that. Like I said, you were protected by the nobility, but the minute somebody has an agenda, it's entirely fragile. So in the case of like Oscar Wilde, for instance, he was doing all of these plays that were about high society and making fun of things, and being the clever queer guy on the scene was you had a lot of currency there.
Yeah.
And then the minute somebody was just like, oh, you're being a little bit too socially, politically critical.
We're gonna.
Now we're going to try you for the crime of homosexuality, which everybody in the upper, crust knows is a fact.
Yeah.
And it's not just a fact with you; it's a fact with their relatives and friends.
half of them.
Multiple people. Yeah. Tons of them. So. When Oscar Wilde went on trial for homosexuality, he was persecuted by Edward Carson, who also led the Ulster Volunteer Force in Northern Ireland, which was the first Protestant, all these Irish savages of pure maniacs. You have to leave this to the British. We're Ulster men. And so he was the one that incited the beginning of kind of sort of like the Irish KKK,
Right.
where you got to keep these people down, and we're the boss, and no Catholics, all that. But he was also the prosecutor of Oscar Wilde for the crime of homosexuality. And when Oscar Wilde was on the stand, Edward Carson is cross-examining him, and this is what undid Oscar Wilde, was basically him lampooning the entire trial and the idea of this is
Preposterous.
completely preposterous.
Yeah.
He was like, he was shown a picture of him, and he's like, I have reports that you were kissing this man. Did you kiss this man? And he was like, heavens knows, terribly ugly. And the court is roaring with laughter.
Yeah.
But he's undone by he's like, are you saying if he wasn't ugly, you would have kissed him?
Right, exactly.
And he's like, obviously, that's the punchline, you fucking idiot.
Thank you for explaining the joke.
Yeah. But that was what convicted him.
Yeah.
And then Oscar Wilde goes to jail. He creates the Ballad of Reading Jail, this whole thing about the misery of men, people oppressed, from the circumstances, somebody going to the gallows to be hung, and everybody in the prison mourning him. And there's this whole dichotomy between his work, where he was like a kind of puffy upper crust, making fun of society,
A Gore Vidal type, if you will.
Yeah, all that stuff, and then it's just like hard human emotion and life and death. And the idea of a prison as a crime. Yeah. Just totally tearing that down in a century earlier than now we just accept prisons. And he's just going, listen, the whole idea of a prison to be the person that puts somebody behind. But there's the great line is this too I know, and wise it were if each could know the same. Every prison that man builds is built with bricks of shame and bound with bars, lest Christ should see how men his brothers maim. It's absolutely devastating. Yeah, and it's the whole thing's leading up to somebody else being executed and him just watching it happen. Yeah. And he's like, the warders with their shoes of felt crept by each padlocked door. They knelt and saw with eyes of awe gray figures on the floor, and wondered why men knelt to pray who never prayed before. And he's just describing the prison atmosphere of this schmo that's going to get fucking hung. Yeah. And he goes into the whole thing of them burying the bodies with lye and the entire experience, I mean, while he's in prison, his boyfriend's leaving him. He's like, I'm going to fuck everybody. Some guy that's still high society. Yeah. And he's just like devastated, alone in prison. It's completely transformational thing that still lives in his it totally takes everything he was brilliant at and just completely changes the scene. It's absolutely incredible. It
redirects that energy. I used to be the happy-go-lucky, effeminate guy, but now you throw me behind these bars and now I'm gonna start seeing some truth.
Yeah, I mean, there was a thing to being I thought
I could have played nice my whole life.
I just think people in these positions at those times always thought, this is going to be legal in a couple of years. Everybody's going to know this is ridiculous, because I know people that know it's ridiculous. Yeah. And they always think that the tides of change are sooner than they're going to come. Right. But it's just...
But, also, this is who I am.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it?
I have to be honest about who I am.
Right, and I know that...
And you're all okay with it, and the only reason you're not okay with it is because you think other people aren't.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. Well, who is the guy, the effeminate man who's always the center of the Hollywood Square?
Oh, it's Paul Lynde.
Paul Lynde. There's a story of Paul Lynde. He's in some bar in fucking Milwaukee or some shit. All these bikers are in the bar and they're like, "What are you doing here, buddy? I'm gonna fuck it. You gotta get the fuck out of here. I'm gonna beat the shit out of you." So Paul Lynde takes a bottle and smashes it on the counter and goes, "I'll fight every one of you. I'm crazier than you." And I go, "All right, this guy's okay."
I heard he's a secret square.
I want to just share with you a couple of things that have been on my mind.
I'll suck your cocks, all you guys!
Suck our cocks.
Yeah!
Nothing puts you on the spot like, come on, get it up. You're a tough guy, right? Get it up.
Yeah. Tough guy. Come on. But you got no
in front of your friends, huh? You're a tough guy.
You didn't have any trouble last night.
You fucking chomping down all them Limp Biscuits.
Ooh, Limp Biscuits again? Ooh, Wookie cookies. Boy, my Fisco.
I was talking about this, and I think maybe I've talked to you about it before. There was, there's some things about Korean culture that really, really fascinate me, and there's the idea of when people are like so into their race, and like the Nazis were like, the mythology there was like, oh, the German people, the spirits come out of the Schwarz world, the Black Forest, and you know we're special because of that. And in Korea, it's this mountain, the volcano, it's a crater lake of Korea on the border with China, and they also dispute those lands. You know, like
China's filling in with dirt right now, probably.
Yeah, they're like, China took too much of that after the war. That's all Korean stuff. You know,
That's where the Thetans come out of.
But the guerrillas against the Japanese were hiding out in those woods around the volcano that, you know, Kim Song came from, the original.
Kim Il Sung. Yeah.
Kim Il Sung came from. That was, you know, he
was birthed from a volcano, fully formed.
Is he a Thetan?
Yeah, and he doesn't shit.
But Kim Jong-il was rumored to be born in those forests around the volcanoes, and they were like, no, he was born in the Soviet Union. It was like long after, and
it's a big forest,
you know. But it's a big part of their thing is Mount Paektu or whatever, and
or whatever.
And it's like, you know, it's like, it's just one of these things where it's like, you're really saying we are God's special people because of
this exploding mountain.
Yes.
Oh,
as if there's none other.
Oh, yeah. Song about
it was there was I think a first, you know, millennium explosion that was one of the biggest in the world at the time. Nobody was around. Nobody was really writing about it. They were running.
Your eardrums were exploding.
Yeah. So
fire and brimstone are raining.
You know, and
unless you're that guy in Vesuvius who's just masturbating.
Yeah.
But like all of this stuff informs the Kim Jong-un, you know, Kim Jong-il and
Kim Il Sung
legacy.
Yeah.
Ever since the revolution, it's, you know, it's become just, you can't distinguish history from mythology in the North, and that is, of course, immensely powerful. And everything being controlled as far as what you ingest. So Kim Jong-il, you know, he had this in-law that was a married-in uncle to Kim Jong-un now that was executed. He was the highest-ranking person that was in the North Korean establishment that was part of, you know, Kim Jong-il dies, and now you have to bring up the son. Yeah. And then Kim Jong-un decides, this guy's got too much power. Yeah. You know? And the theory is that the uncle was trying to be like, listen, we cannot do shit if we do not become economic. Yeah. Like, military alone is just...
You can't compete.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, the reason that I feel old is that I'm like, oh, I know what happens here. North Korea rattles the sabers and is like, well, we're going to be nuclear. And then people give them aid in the hope that they talk.
Right.
And then they take the aid and like, thanks for the food later. And then when they run out of food, they start being like, we can still have nukes. But now they actually have nukes.
Wait, you mean what just happened over the last 2 years?
Well, no, I mean,
then 6 years before that.
Kim Jong-il, you know,
and then the 6 years before
that whole time, the whole thing was like, we can't fuck with North Korea because of China, for the most part. Right. That was the prevailing idea. It's like, they're protected by China, we can't do it, but they're worrisome. So every time they like, kind of like, you know, it was just like one of those repeating news cycles, like the Middle East, where you're like, there's nothing new. This is just the same shit on and on and on. And so this uncle was like, but he's married in. He's not
blood.
He's not blood. So he goes as high as he can, and he's kind of reprimanded a few times for exercising a little bit too much influence under Kim Jong-il, the father of the current premier. And he's, you know, but he's not going anywhere. He's married to his sister. That's how it is. But in the transition of power from Kim Jong-il to Kim Jong-un, Kim Jong-un was like, this guy has way too much power, and he's overseen this transition, and that's made him more powerful than me because I'm the new guy, he's the old guy, and he needs to be gotten rid of. Apparently, he just wanted to open up more economically, but...
Even that's threatening.
Even that is threatening, because if you decide, no, we're going to be a military power, this other guy is saying another thing, and don't forget, somebody at that level, a 4-star general in that world... you know, he fulfilled jobs that only the supreme leader was supposed to have. but he was delegated to do these things. And
Well, maybe he just wanted a Roy Rogers, and Kim Jong Un was like, "Well, let's get a McDonald's."
right, yeah. But like he would be seen, and this is very Trumpy. He would be seen at the kind of inauguration of Kim Jong Un, kind of half-heartedly clapping.
Oh, that's
like the optics weren't great, and there was several things of him kind of like looking bored during Kim Jong Un's speeches, and that is the exact kind of thing. If Donald Trump had Kim Jong Un's power, he would be like,
Yeah.
let's fucking kill this guy. This fucking guy he wasn't clapping per minute enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's basically what happened to this guy. So they say, children, women from his family were all, taken out, but nobody really knows because there's no news source here.
Yeah.
And that is, of course, a monstrosity. Around 2014, this all happened. But his deputies were executed by, apparently Kim Jong-un was president. Yeah. And that's horrible.
Yes.
But...
Okay.
But the original rumor about what happened to these guys, the deputies of his uncle and his uncle himself, the deputies were definitely executed before him, and he had to watch that happen. With Kim Jong-un there, like, what do you think? And the original story was they were torn apart by dogs.
Yes.
And then people were like,
dogs.
no, that's not true. But what the prevailing theory that's taken hold, that is, again, not confirmed.
But the medium is rumor.
Is people like my friend Chris that submitted the Airbud story. He knows that I love ridiculously horrible death because it's so absurd.
Emphasis on ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it's borderline Wile E. Coyote shit.
Sure. He ran into a mountain that was painted like a tunnel.
Right. So presumably these guys had a mountain behind them because of how they were executing these people, which was firing anti-aircraft guns at a guy like 20 feet away.
Yes, I could see that as the real story.
Anti-aircraft machine guns.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got money to waste.
So I know this is hard to describe for people why I enjoy this so much. Because it is inconceivably evil.
Imagine a person being there one second.
Exactly.
Yes.
And then,
not even the shoes.
And then, just like a pair of legs still standing because the force of a thing that would bring down a Malaysian aircraft is now fired at a man just across the room.
Yeah.
And it would be like, boom! You know what
yeah.
I mean? Like,
as that shell flies by you from 20 feet away, you probably go deaf.
Yes, and you need to be worried about what is 1 mile behind this guy's torso that is still flying on top of the fucking shell.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you better be firing it against the volcano that these guys worship.
Have they interviewed the janitors?
Right? Like, I mean, it's just more like, and the uncle is watching these two deputies get executed this way, and he's fainting.
Is that it? I mean, it almost doesn't sound like an execution.
It's not an execution. But I mean, can you imagine Kim Jong-un watching it and then looking at his uncle like,
I was in Harvard business.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's just so cartoony that it to me it becomes out of tragedy and just into complete cartoon insanity.
Yeah, it's Dr. Strangelove. It's Kubrickian dark comedy shit.
Yeah, it's totally insane.
Line them up against that volcano back there and do bring out the artillery.
Yeah, and it's the weird thing about what I want to show here is the volcano is, viewed by Korea as a whole as kind of, their cultural mythology and like where their greatness comes from. And this idea of greatness from race to me is so laughable. Yeah. And my dad sometimes he'd be like, yeah, that guy invented the fucking toaster. He was Irish. I'm like, what about that guy that killed all those women? And he's like, yeah, he was from shitty Ireland.
Yeah.
And I was talking about this with Richard Park. Shout out to Richard Park. He listens to every episode of the show. I love Richard Park. He's one of my best friends.
Richard Park is great.
I love you, Richard Park. He's gonna be really uncomfortable hearing that. But well,
he's Korean, so he's great.
Well, we were talking about how his dad would be talking about the Koreans are great, and I was like, yeah, my dad would be talking about Irish people are great. It's so fucking silly and ridiculous to think that, Yeah, you had nothing to do with being Irish or Korean. It has nothing to do with you. You didn't do it. You didn't earn it. It's ridiculous.
Your parents fucked there.
Yeah, nobody gives a shit. Move on.
Right.
And so he was talking about, he's like, in South Korea, he's like, we didn't get the whole bird flu thing. And we were like, well, yeah, we're Korean. Like, was like the prevailing thing.
They had fans running.
No, they had all the fucking
the fans were off?
They had all the kimchi.
Oh, right.
So it was just like high garlic antibiotic thing. That's why they didn't get it. But also, on the ridiculous side of South Korea, I was going to talk about fan death.
Yes.
Which is the idea they peddled apparently during a power shortage, blackouts, etc. in the 70s in South Korea. They started peddling the idea, and this is like a lesson in controlling the population. They would just be like, I'll read an actual news article because
from South Korea
in the 70s, and this was a propaganda push with the help of the media to basically make people afraid of fans and using air conditioning and power after they were asleep. So it was like the news stories would basically break down like this. They would just take a person that died, right?
That was bad.
And they would report the death, and they would write something that was exactly like this. A man reportedly died on Monday morning after sleeping with an electric fan running. The 59-year-old victim, only known by his surname Min, was found dead with the fan fixed directly at him.
Oh, no.
It was right on him.
And now he's dead.
And
You do the math.
Reportedly dead. Reportedly.
So the article would also say there was no evidence the fan was responsible.
Well, no one would read that
which
far.
means the fan was responsible.
But that's also
classic fan.
That's like paragraph 6, probably.
Yeah, that's below the fold. No one's reading
And
that.
it's also, people only remember like the last part of the sentence, and the last part of that sentence is the fan was responsible.
So it was just like, this is still a prevailing thing. In Korea, fans have a timer on them to go off after you fall asleep.
Oh, well, that just makes sense.
It does. But it's also based on
the medium being
rumor.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, well, Ben Franklin was big on air moving. He was always like, I don't get a cold if the air is moving.
Well, yeah, because he was fucking buck naked, too, and he wanted all that fucking heat on his grundle.
So he could sleep on top of all those dead kids underneath his floorboards.
Yeah, and all those French hookers. So now you're making a case against fans, right? What do? They say that there's apparently evidence that it started in the 20s, 30s. In my opinion, I think it was totally Korean government media collaboration in creating a hype stereotype that fans kill you.
Yeah.
Have you slept through the night with a fan on?
Oh, every night.
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Some people I know have tinnitus, and they're like, they hear ringing, so they have to have the fan on.
Right.
There has to be, that. So they couldn't decide what the various...
But the reason I don't die when I leave the fan on?
Why?
It's because I'm white.
Well, that's huge. That's a huge.
And you're the best man.
Yeah.
But so they couldn't decide what the cause of death was from fan, right? So they had 3.
The cause of death, fan.
Yeah, so you can't just say it's the fan.
No, it'd be chopped.
You know what I mean? Yeah, you've been chopped to death. Right?
Yeah.
It's a Bond death.
So they were like, okay, it's hyperthermia.
Ooh.
Heat stress.
It sounds like Pablo Escobar.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Which,
Yeah.
which again is a way of chop death.
I'm a fan.
Air movement will increase sweat evaporation, which cools the body, but in extreme heat, when the blown air is warmer than the body's temperature, it will increase the heat stress placed on the body, potentially speeding the onset of heat exhaustion and other detrimental conditions. The EPA discourages people from using fans in closed rooms without ventilation. Of course, every room is ventilated, though, right?
Well, not the basements.
So, and then what's the other reason they come up with? Hypothermia.
Oh, you can't have that.
You burn to death and now you're frozen.
Yeah.
Right?
Your skin's gone.
Hypothermia is abnormally low body temperature caused by inadequate thermoregulation. As the metabolism slows down at night, one becomes more sensitive to temperature and thus supposedly more prone to hypothermia. People who believe this theory think a fan operating in a closed room all night can lower temperature to the point of causing hypothermia.
Oof.
Bullshit. I love it.
Number 3. Asphyxiation.
Ah, you can't have that.
The more air you get, the less you have, right?
Yeah.
It's alleged that fans may cause asphyxiation by oxygen displacement and carbon dioxide intoxication in the process of human respiration. Inhaled fresh air is exhaled with a lower concentration of oxygen gas and higher concentration of carbon dioxide gas, causing a gradual reduction of O2 and buildup of CO2 in a completely unventilated room. Again, these are not labs. These are not completely unventilated.
Yeah.
Nobody's doing that.
Well, when I sleep, I don't have the fan pointing at me because I don't want to blow the air I'm breathing out back in.
right.
You know, I think that, you can't have that. That's how you fix it.
That's how it works. It goes right back in.
It goes right back in.
Yeah.
Right, but this, like, all of these things come from old superstitions that people would believe. And, like, the idea of a fan, when you first saw a fan, you'd be like, this can't be right. And, like, you're like,
It's still spinning.
It's so good. Like, and then people would be like, people were like afraid of it. Like, I walked into Wi-Fi, I got cancer. Like they were seriously like, I think I walked into a thicket of Wi-Fi.
There's too much air.
Yeah, like it was barbed wire.
Tinnitus. What's the password?
Yeah. So it would be like that shit, and people would come up with all types of shit. They'd be like, plants, breathe, CO2. So people would believe if you're in a room with plants, the plants will kill you.
Oh, you got to kill those plants.
It's like, no, the plants are giving you oxygen, you fucking idiot.
Oh my god!
Like,
no, the plants will strangle you.
Yeah, all of these things come from these old superstitions, and then they were just played upon by the media to get to people. But when fans first came around, people would be like dead in front of it, like as close as I am to this microphone, they'd be like, my face is numb. I'm all chopped up. It's like, no, you idiot. It's just your face is
a fan.
It's a fan.
Yeah.
You're a little cool.
Don't spontaneously not bust on us.
But it's just like, it's so fascinating to me. And like, I want to have a disclaimer because like anytime we talk about foreign phenomenon, I want to be like, I'm not saying all Koreans are crazy or anything.
No.
But just like North and South, how these rumors and superstitions and everything throughout the world like takes hold. And it can become so part of what everybody believes in regular life.
That
and
it becomes
that's just like shorthand for religion.
Right,
Sure.
But also like, a lot of buildings not having a 13th floor.
Yes. Yes. Which they do.
Yeah, they're all there, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can count from the outside.
Yeah. What? Like, what? Huh?
Hey, man, I work on the 14th floor. Now you're down. I counted.
Only in America is that dangerous.
Yeah. But anyway, I just wanted to share those couple of things.
That's great.
Little potpourri of various things in Korea, North and South, that are equally just insane,
Quite.
And it is like, the closed off, military thing is obviously far more dangerous and horrible and crippling, but it is amazing how people can take mythology and just expand on it in any kind of Western or otherwise civilization.
Sure.
Well, I mean, that's why America is the greatest country that's ever existed on the face of the earth.
Of course.
Our
founding fathers were...
and Jesus was from Missouri or something?
Yeah.
He's still built.
White.
Yeah,
Jesus was a Christian.
Yeah, white as hell, 40 wives.
He stayed inside the whole time.
He's an indoor kid.
He's an indoor kid.
Peanut allergies all night.
He was tacked up in the rec room.
Just chopped up in the rec room.
All right, guys, I think that's it for us.
That's good.
And Matt, you did a fantastic profile.
Lovely.
I love you guys. Good night. I'm John Fahey.
I am Aaron Pita.
Matt Brousseau.
Good night, guys.